right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's study call. Again, we're continuing in with our study, Your Invisible Power by Genevieve Behrend. Yesterday, we finished off with her story about how she became the pupil of Thomas Troward. And remember, this whole book, Your Invisible Power, has been talking about how we're able to use the power within us, that creative power, to influence this invisible force that permeates and penetrates everything, to bring and create things around us. Now, the next few chapters are fairly small. We'll probably be able to do more than one chapter today, but let's hop right in. We'll see where we get. So today we're in chapter 11, how to bring the power in your word into action. Excuse me. In your every word, there is the power germ that expands and projects itself in the direction your word indicates, and ultimately develops into physical expression. Now, oftentimes, because of the word germ has changed itself in the last 100 years, when we use the word germ, often we're thinking of these little microbes that are infecting our body, or that we got to wash our hands to wash away the germs, and that is a form of that word. But before that, oftentimes this word germ was just talking about the very beginning of something to grow. The word germinate, that's where that root word germ comes from. Or germinate comes from the word germ, and it's to make something grow. And so the germ is that very smallest thing, that very first thing that we then use to grow, to expand, as she says, and project itself in the direction. So we talked a couple of days ago, or maybe it was yesterday, I'm not 100% sure, about this idea that when we create something, we've created it on the spiritual plane of creation. And the more that we can believe that, and believe that when we hold into our mind this vision of what it is that we have, that we're planting that germ in that spiritual world, that we've created it in that spiritual world. And then we just need to do the actions necessary to help that germinate, or to grow into something that takes part and comes into our physical world. For example, if you wish to establish joy in your consciousness, just repeat the word joy secretly, persistently, and emphatically. The joy germ begins to expand and project itself until your whole being is filled with joy. This is not a mere fancy, but a truth. Once you experience this power, you will daily prove that these facts have not been fabricated to fit a theory, but the theory has been built up by careful observation of facts. Everyone knows that joy comes from within. Another may give you cause for joy, but no one can be joyous for you. Joy is a state of consciousness, and consciousness is purely, Troward says, mental. So this idea that that if you hold something in your mind, she's talking about joy, that becomes the natural state from which we operate. And the reason that this is we know by studying the mind, we know by studying the way that it operates, that the things that we focus on with our time and with our attention, that those things get turned over to our subconscious mind, and it gets reprogrammed, or programmed into our subconscious as a part of our belief system. So if you hold the thought of joy, that you are joyful in your mind, you're going to submit that idea to your subconscious mind. Now, our subconscious mind, we've talked about the difference between our conscious and our subconscious mind on these calls before, that your conscious mind is something that you use to reason. It's something that you use to analyze, and you can use it to reject or accept any kind of idea. But your subconscious mind doesn't have the ability to reason. It doesn't have the ability to reject or accept any idea, other than it. Well, it does have the ability to accept, but it doesn't have the ability to reject anything unless you have a program within your subconscious mind that says otherwise. And so if we hold something in our conscious mind, we turn that over to our subconscious. Because our subconscious doesn't have the ability to reason, it accepts whatever we hold in our conscious mind. And so if you want to program something into your subconscious, a new kind of belief, you want to focus your time and attention on that new idea, to hold it, to incorporate it. The scriptures kind of talk about this idea that we put these things on the fleshy tablets of our heart, because oftentimes, or in the past, the ancient Greeks used to refer to the subconscious as the heart. So when they would put something into their subconscious, when they would program something in it, they talked about it becoming part of their being, as part of their heart. Now, there's some truth to that, that your heart does have brain cells and we can program things into our heart. That's very true. But I think it's probably a little bit more accurate that when we hold on to things and we incorporate something into a part of our being, we create that subconscious program. It's in the subconscious where that's created. But your subconscious and your heart are very much connected a lot of the time. And so it's no wonder that that kind of they referred to the heart and that part of themselves as being connected, and that the subconscious was the heart. And so remember that whatever you're focusing on goes into your subconscious. And this can also go into the negative. So if you're focused on the things that are going wrong in your life, if you're focusing on that you're unhappy, your subconscious mind is going to take that pattern, it's going to take that thought, and it's going to say, oh, that's what we want to create. And it will create that out in our outer environment. Because see, your subconscious creates whatever's turned over to it. Mental faculties always work under something which stimulates them, and this stimulus may come either from without, through the external senses, or from within by the consciousness of something not perceptible on the physical plane. The recognition of this interior source of stimulus enables you to bring into your consciousness any state you desire. Once a thing seems normal to you, it is as surely yours through the law of growth and attraction, as it is yours to no addition after you have conscious use of figures. So we want to learn to build these capabilities in our mind. And really what she's talking about here is our imagination. We want to be able to build up our imagination so that we can effectively turn over, when we visualize something in our mind through our imagination, that over to our subconscious. Because as she said, there's two ways that we're influenced. We're influenced from the outer world, and we're influenced from the things that we hold within our mind. Now, if you study into quantum physics, what quantum physics will tell you is that they're actually one and the same, that whoever you're being within here, you see out there, that our environment is just a mirror. It mirrors back to us who we are. So if you are a negative person that sees the worst in everything, you're going to see that in your outer environment, because your environment is going to mirror what you are on the inside. But if you have a grateful heart, if you have one of faith, if you believe that all things are possible for you, you're going to see that start to manifest in your outer world. And you're going to see things, and you're going to be attracted to people and resources that confirm that belief that you can do whatever it is that you want. So just keep these things in your mind and try to grow this ability. Just to bring back to you guys something that she talked about earlier in the book, is that you want to do this first thing in the morning and just as you're going to sleep, to imagine in your mind. And we've talked about why that works, because of the patterns in our brain, of alpha, beta, theta, and delta, that we go through as we're transitioning from sleep to wakefulness, and from wakefulness to sleep. Because that period of when we're in that theta into delta is a time where our conscious mind is shutting down that filter that we have to process through, and our subconscious mind is becoming more wakeful. So it's easier to program things into that there at that time. This method of repeating the word makes the word in all its limitless meaning yours. Because words are the embodiment of thoughts, and thought is creative, neither good nor bad, simply creative. This is the reason why faith builds up and fear destroys. Only believe, and all things are possible unto you. Again, that phrase in some form or another is found many, many times in at least the Christian scriptures. Only believe, and all things are possible unto you. It is faith that gives you dominion over every adverse circumstance or condition. It is your word of faith that sets you free, not faith in any specific thing or act, but simple faith in your best self in all ways. Excuse me. Now there is a book, and I do a little bit of a study with this in some of my my 90-day programs that I help with people that are struggling with addiction. But there's a book called Trust by Iyanla Vanzant. And I would highly recommend that book, because as you're reading through that book, developing trust within yourself, developing trust in God, in the universe, whatever you want to call it, developing that trust that you can do whatever it is that you need to do is so important. I have experienced that in my own life, that transformation towards fear and being afraid of what's happening to me and being the victim, to one of faith, where I actually can control and shape the world around me. And that's what can happen if you develop, because this faith isn't something that, and just belief in something isn't something that just happens. It's kind of a muscle. It's something that we have to grow into. And the more you use it, the more you'll see the effects in your outer world, which then will reinforce what you feel on the inside. And it's just this ever spiraling pattern. And that pattern can either take you up towards more belief and more faith, or it can take you down to more fear and more dissolution and more just poverty and lack in your life. And so you have the ability to choose based off of what you hold in your mind, what you want to create. It is because of this ever-present creative power within the heart of the word that makes your health, your peace of mind, and your financial condition a reproduction of your most habitual thought. Try to believe and understand this, and you will find yourself master of every adverse circumstance or condition, a prince of power. All right, so that's chapter 11, how to bring the power in your word into action. So again, this idea of that we've talked about before is you hold in your mind that clear vision, you have that uplifted emotion, and then opportunities will come your way for you to engage and act in your outer environment. And what's inside of you, you will see in your outer environment as well. You take action upon those things in your outer environment, and then that's going to bring you the things that you want. And specifically, what she's talking about here is your word, using that power of your focus so that you program those things into your subconscious mind so that then they take form in your outer world. There are quite a few books out there, many of them very good, that talk about the power of your word. And if you want to go out and pick some of those up, I would highly recommend that. Your word is so powerful. There is a book called The 4 Agreements. And the first agreement is be impeccable with your word. And what the author meant by being impeccable is, impeccable means without sin at its root, but it has this idea, this connotation that we're exact with our word, that we don't let our word talk about things that we don't actually want, things that we don't actually care for. So if we're talking about poverty, if we're talking about ill health, those things we're establishing with our word into our subconscious, and we're then not being impeccable with that word. We want to be impeccable in the sense that we're only using our words to speak forth the things that we want in our outer world. Now, part of the you have things like Harry Potter and some of these magical worlds that people have created, and they can speak words and magic happens. Now, a lot of that idea, I think, comes from its core, and why I think, sometimes feel attracted to those ideas is that we have that same power. Now, it's not in the same way that we can say something and then it happens, it comes into being, but we can speak forth what we want, and there is a little bit of a gestation period, there is a little bit of a germination period, as we've been talking about, for that to make its way into the physical world. But just as surely it will. Whatever you speak forth from your mouth, and whatever you speak forth in your mind, that takes part in your outer world. When we have enough time here, we can go into chapter 12. Chapter 12 is small as well. And chapter 12 is called How to Increase Your Faith. And that's something that we were talking about, that we need to increase that faith. So she's going to tell us how. But you ask, how can I speak the word of faith when I have little or no faith? Every living thing has faith in something or somebody. It is the quality of the creative energy in the positive faith thought which gives it vitality, not the form it takes. Even intense fear is alive with faith. You fear smallpox because you believe it possible for you to contract it. You fear poverty and loneliness because you believe them possible for you. And so the ideas she's bringing out here is that faith and fear are really very similar. Fear is just you have the belief in something negative. Faith is you have the belief in something positive. And we can use our belief in either fear or faith. Fear to take us down and to destroy us, or faith to build us up and to create something strong. And they're both just, actually, faith is a little bit more powerful than fear. Faith can overcome fear, but both of these feelings are both very strong. And now if you want to study this, they've actually done scientific studies with equipment and measured the wavelengths of people when they're feeling certain emotions. And the feeling of faith is a higher vibrational wavelength of emotion than fear. Fear is a lower vibrational form of a feeling. And so faith does have more power than fear, but oftentimes I think sometimes as human beings are naturally inclined to be a little bit pessimistic, to go towards the fear. And so we would just want to change that in our mind. We want to reprogram ourselves so that we go more towards the faith than the fear. It is your habitual tendency of thought that reappears in your mind, your body, and your affairs, not the occasional thought upon some specific line or desire. So she's talking about here that if you have just a stray thought, something, you're not going to manifest that out in your world. You're not going to just have that appear. A lot of it's because for something to appear in our outer environment, we have to turn it over to our subconscious mind. And just thinking one random thought or something here and there is not going to program that into our subconscious mind. It's the repetitiveness, the stuff that we hold there most often that gets turned over to it. And then because then that becomes part of who we are. And then the mirror of the world reflects back to us who we are. It is faith which understands that every creation had its birth in the womb of thought. Words that give you dominion over all things, your lesser self included. And this feeling of faith is increased and intensified through observing what it does. So as you're holding in your mind these thoughts of faith, and you're trying to create this in your outer world, just take notice of what begins to happen in your outer world. And that's what she's talking about. We can increase this faith by observing the acts of faith, or what faith is doing upon us. And you can even do this to the opposite side, that if you're feeling fear, you can watch and observe the things that are being created in your life and see the outcome of the fear driving your life onward towards things that you probably don't want. This observation is the observation of your state of consciousness when you did, not when you hoped you might, but feared it was too good to be true. How did you feel that time when you simply had to bring yourself into a better frame of mind and did, or you had to have a certain thing and got it? Live these experiences over again and again mentally until you really feel in touch with the self that knows and does, and the best there is yours. And so part of, she said, increasing that faith is through repetition. We just keep doing it. and programming that. And then we will see the outer effects in our outer environment. And then seeing the outer effects in our environment by observation will reinforce more faith to us. And we can continue to grow that more and more. And there's also the idea that she ends off with here, that until you really feel in touch with the self that knows and does, and the best there is yours. I've talked before about the idea that you are this intelligence and that resides kind of here, and that this intelligence, this higher side of yourself, this thing that actually controls our body. And if we are aware of us being this intelligence, this higher side of ourself, this higher side of ourself has great faith. It knows. It has had lots more experience. This part of you, this intelligence, has always existed. Now, for whatever reason, coming into this physical world and gaining this physical body has hidden away to us the reality, the fact that we are this intelligence, and we have to uncover. We have to experience being this intelligence. But once we can connect with that higher side of ourselves, with that intelligence, that core part of who we are, our faith will increase. And so that's what she's talking about here. And the best way to uncover that is to be of the observer, because you, as that intelligence, are observer. You're not this body, but you're seeing things through this body. You're feeling things through this body. You're tasting things through this body, those senses. You're experiencing all that through that intelligence. Your thoughts are what you're experiencing through this body. Your feelings you're experiencing through this body, but your intelligence aren't your thoughts. It's not your emotions. And so these things are stuff you can observe. And as you observe them, you kind of waken up that sense of your intelligence. And the more and more you can wake up that part of you, who you really are, that best version of yourself, the more faith you're going to have, because you're going to realize the power that you actually have, and that you can create whatever it is that you want. All right, we're going to end it off with there. We just went over chapter 11 and chapter 12 today in the study, and we'll pick up our study tomorrow and chapter 13. So until then, go ahead and make yourselves a wonderful day.